In this video, I'm going to demonstrate an entire solo game. To begin my turn, I'm going to draw 5 cards from my deck and start playing the game. The first thing that I do in my turn in a solo mode is that I must discard one of the cards of the active gene pool. I am going to choose to discard this competence card and immediately replace it with a new card from the top of the deck. Next, I'm going to start playing and buying cards. I'm going to choose to play an opportunistic pathogen in play so that I can start attacking the body. I've then decided that I want to buy this respiratory card right here. It costs 4, so I need to spend cards that equal 4. So I'm going to spend 4 new DNA cards for the total, and then I'm going to acquire that card. All those go into my discard pile, and then I fill the space from the top of the deck. The next phase of my turn that I'm able to do is attacking. This opportunistic pathogen has an attack of 2. I've decided to attack the respiratory tract. The first barrier card has a defense of 2. My attack is 2, so I therefore defeat it. The barrier card is removed, and I receive 2 genetic value points for my next turn. To end my turn, I discard all the cards I used on this turn, and I draw 5 for my next turn. Starting my next turn, I will again discard 1 card from the gene pool deck and immediately replace it with a new card. On this turn, I've decided to place another opportunistic pathogen in play to attack the body. I've also determined that I want to buy this trait card which has heavy defense, mycolic acid. In order to buy it, I've got to place 4 cards into my discard pile. Each of these cards has a genetic value of 1, so those add up to 4, so I spend those to my discard pile and I acquire the new card. I then again immediately refill the center row deck. The next phase that I'm able to do again is attacking. Now this time I have 2 opportunistic pathogens in play. I can add these attacks together into a single tract, or I could split them in tracks. In the solo mode, it doesn't make sense to attack different tracks because I really can't win the game that way. So I am again going to attack the respiratory tract. The top barrier card is a 3, so I add my 2 attacks together for 4. I'm able to defeat this card. I then take 3 genetic value tokens that I can use on a future turn. And finally, I clean up my turn by discarding my cards to my discard pile. Starting my third turn, I again need to discard 1 card in the center row. I've now run out of cards, so to perform my next turn, it's necessary that I shuffle my deck and start again. For my third turn, I draw back up to 5 cards. In this hand, I've got some interesting trait cards to work with. Now that I've got some trait cards to work with, I've decided that I want to upgrade some of my existing pathogens in play. So I'm going to upgrade this opportunistic pathogen, which will trash it and remove it from the game, and I will replace it with a respiratory pathogen. I must go ahead and pay the cost, which is 2 in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm going to discard 2 points of genetic value to acquire that card. I'm now going to put a couple trait cards into play. As you can see, I've attached 2 trait cards to my respiratory pathogen, increasing its attack and defense abilities. Next, I've decided that I don't like the cards in the center row and that I want to discard them. So I'm going to use one of my Rapid Cell Division's special abilities right here in the middle. Discard all 5 cards in the gene pool. This is a trash ability, meaning that I trash this card and remove it from the game. I then get to sweep all 5 cards from the center row and discard them and immediately replace them with new cards. I've now decided that I want to acquire this heavy toxin card. So it costs 4. I'm going to put it into my discard pile, and now I need to spend 4 points to acquire this card. So I've spent 2 cards that have 2 genetic value, and I'm going to return 2 genetic value tokens to the stock. Also, before I forget, I have this trait card that I've attached, which lets me place 1 +2 defense token on another respiratory pathogen. I have an opportunistic pathogen in play, which is a multi-point pathogen, but I can take this token and put it on this card, and the second that I do, it becomes a respiratory pathogen, and now this pathogen must attack respiratory and cannot attack any other tracks. It's again time for me to attack the body, and this time I've got a pretty big attack. I've got this pathogen with 2 attack, plus the token of 4, plus this pathogen which makes 6, plus this card which makes 8, and this card which makes 9. So now I'm doing 9 attack to the body. I have 9 attack to deal to the body this turn. The first barrier card is a 3, which I defeat. The next barrier card, which is a 2, which I defeat, so that's 5. I still have 4 attack left. The next barrier card is a 2, and I've now depleted the immune system with 7 total attack, depleting the immune system. My attack was 9, and so now I take 2 damage counters. One other aspect that's important of the solo game is that whenever you defeat one barrier card, you must remove a barrier card from another tract as well. I've now defeated the entire respiratory tract, which means that all the other barrier cards are also gone as well. This makes it so that I can't attack other barriers and get more money before the immune system activates. So now that all the barriers have been removed, the immune system will activate and start attacking me on my next turn. So I'm going to clean up this turn and start my 4th turn. To start my 4th turn, I must again discard a card in the center row and immediately replace it with a new card. Now that I've depleted the barrier decks, on this turn the immune system is going to start attacking me. So it's really time for me to make hay and buy some big cards that are going to help me in my fight against the body. On my last turn, I accumulated 7 genetic value points for defeating all of those barrier cards. So now I need to spend this money and really try to improve my deck. First, I've decided that I'm going to buy the environment card Smoking, which will give my pathogens a preemptive attack ability. It costs 3, so I'm going to buy that and spend 3 genetic value. The card goes to my discard pile, and then I spend 3 genetic value points to acquire it. I've now decided that I'm going to use another Rapid Cell Division card. So that, again, this special ability will discard all 5 cards in the gene pool, and it will trash this card from my hand. I've replaced the center row. One of the cards is Unvaccinated that has come up, and I've decided that I want to buy it. The cost is 3, so I need to spend 3 genetic value to acquire it. The card goes to my discard pile, and then I spend an additional 3 genetic value. Again, I'm really not liking any of the cards in the center row for me. I'm looking for respiratory cards, so I'm going to use another Rapid Cell Division to clean out that row. So I take this card and I trash it, and I remove all the cards from the center row. Next, I've decided I'm going to upgrade this opportunistic pathogen to the next level and make it a tract-specific respiratory pathogen. So again, in order to do this process, I simply remove the card and trash it from the game. I replace it with the next level of pathogen. The token that was on it goes back on top of it, so it gets the attack bonus. And again, I must pay the cost of the new pathogen, so I've got to pay 2 genetic value, which I return to the stock. I now have 3 genetic value left in my hand with the cards in my hand, and I've decided I'm going to acquire this Alpha Hemolysin card. So I take the card and I put it into my discard pile. I spend the 3 genetic value from my hand into my discard pile, and then I refill the center row. Now we've reached the point in the game where things really get interesting. I've defeated the body's barriers, and so now I must draw 1 immune system card for every pathogen I have in play for the rest of the game. I begin with deck 1. These cards are drawn face down and assigned randomly. I cannot look at them and decide where I want them to go. So I just randomly assign them face down, then we flip them over and resolve the effects simultaneously. The first card that I have on my left is a basophil with attack of 3. So if my pathogen has a defense of 3 or less, it will die. The pathogen I have in play has a defense of 2, and so it will die at the end of my turn. The other card that I've drawn is a fever card with an attack of 2. It is currently attacking a pathogen that has a defense of 2, 3, 6. So the pathogen definitely lives. However, I've got a fever card that I have to put into my discard pile. That card is now drawn and put into my discard pile. Finally, we clean up the turn and we discard the immune cards that were drawn. They go into the discard pile that is immune system deck number 2, which forms the discard pile for deck number 1. I then discard my cards into my discard pile and start my next turn. To start my next turn, I draw my next 5 cards. I also must go back to the center row and discard a card there and replace it with a new one from the deck. In my next hand, I've drawn that pesky fever card. I have to go ahead and discard that card. It's not going to do me any good. I've also drawn my preemptive attack card, Smoking, and I'm going to play that card on my best pathogen with the best attack. So this gives me a preemptive attack, and even if this pathogen dies, I will be able to keep the damage counters and victory points. Next, I've decided to buy the card Competence. It only costs 1 genetic value, but every turn in which I draw it, it will give me 3 genetic value to spend. So I spend 1 genetic value, I put it in my discard pile. I'm going to go ahead and spend that card right now. and then I refill from the top of the deck. Finally, I have 2 cards left in my deck, which gives me 2 genetic value. I've decided to spend these into my discard pile to buy an additional pathogen card. I'm going to buy another respiratory pathogen and put it into my discard pile. Next, the next phase that comes up is attacking, and preemptive attack is phase 2 in the game. I have a card that gives me a preemptive attack, so I get to go ahead and make my attack now. My attack is 2 plus 2 plus 1, so I get to do an attack of 5 and automatically take those damage counters from the body. Those damage counters go on the preemptive attack card. Next, the immune system gets to attack me. I've got 1 pathogen in play, so I pull 1 immune system card that will attack my pathogen. This card is an eosinophil. It has an attack of 3. My pathogen has a defense of 6, so it survives easily this round. I then discard the immune system card. I keep the damage counters that I was able to collect this turn, and I discard the preemptive attack card. And then I clean up my turn to start up my next turn. Finally, I draw 5 cards to end my turn. Starting my next turn, I again need to discard 1 card in the center row and replace that with the top card from the deck. Again, this is only for the solo mode. In my new hand, I have the card Unvaccinated. This allows me to draw 3 cards. I have spent my entire deck, which is currently face up into my discard pile. Now I get to reshuffle this deck and draw 3 cards. Alright, I have placed the Unvaccinated card in my discard pile, and I've drawn my 3 cards, and I'm ready to keep my turn moving. I have another card which will give me a card draw ability. Once I put this trait card into play, it gives me an additional attack, and when it goes into a play, I immediately draw another card. I've attached my new trait card to my pathogen already in play, and since it gives me a card draw ability, I'm going to go ahead and draw another card. Next, I've decided I need to get another pathogen in play, especially to take advantage of the sharing trait that I have on my first pathogen. So I'm going to put a respiratory pathogen in play. I immediately may add an attack token to it because of the trait card on my other pathogen that gives me a sharing ability. I've also decided to add a toxin to this card, so I'm going to put that card in play. It's important to note that pathogens may never be linked together by existing toxin or trait cards, so I could not use any of these toxin or trait cards to link my pathogens together. Pathogens always stay separate entities. Finally, I've decided that I need to upgrade the pathogen I just put in play to the next highest level. I want to upgrade it to a super pathogen which costs 4 points. So now I need to discard 4 points of genetic value into my discard pile. When upgrading this respiratory pathogen, I now take that card and I put it back into the stack in which it was taken from. The entry-level pathogens are trashed from the game. The track-specific pathogens go back to their deck, and I replace it with the new super pathogen. Again, I had to pay the cost of 4 in the lower right-hand corner to acquire it. The token that was on the previous pathogen stays, and I get to put it on the new pathogen. The final card in my hand is a respiratory pathogen. I've decided that I'm going to spend this to buy 1 new pathogen card. So I put that in my discard pile, and for 2 genetic value, I acquire another new pathogen card. We are now at the phase in the game where, again, the immune system will attack my pathogens. I've got 2 pathogens in play, and so I will randomly draw immune system cards and assign those face down. Once they're face down, I flip them over, and we're going to find out what happens to the pathogens that I have in play. The one that I have on the left has an attack of 3. The pathogen that I have in play has a defense of 3. Unfortunately, tie goes to the attacker, so this pathogen dies. I lose the attack token, and the pathogen and toxin card go to my discard pile. I then look at this immune system card. It has an attack of only 2, so my pathogen easily lives. However, it requires me to attach a C3 token to this pathogen, which will mean bad things for this pathogen later. I grab the C3 token and put it on the pathogen. Finally, we clean up. The pathogen that died and the toxin go to my discard pile, and then I discard the immune system cards into deck 2 of the immune system. To start my next turn, I draw my new hand of 5 cards. I only have 4 cards available, so now I must take my discard pile and reshuffle it to draw my 5th card. Oh, I almost failed to note, I have a trait card in play that gives me an additional card draw. This goes into effect immediately when the card is played. I get to draw a card then, but when it comes time in my turn to draw cards, it actually increases my hand limit. So I get to draw up to 6 cards to start this turn. To start my next turn, I must again discard one of the cards in the center row and replace it with a new card. All right, starting off my next turn, I've again drawn that pesky fever card, so that just goes in my discard pile. It doesn't do me any good. I've then decided to use one of my new DNA cards. The top icon gives me an ability to discard one card of the center row of the active gene pool deck and replace it with a new card. I want to go fishing and see if I can get something else. So I discard the new DNA card into my, my discard pile, and then I take one of the cards in the active gene pool, I discard it, and I immediately draw a new card to replace it. I've now decided that I want to buy a card from the center row called Biofilm. This is an expensive card that costs 5. But I've got a card in my hand called Competence that gives me 3 genetic value to spend. So I'm going to discard Competence, giving me 3 genetic value. I'm also going to discard a Pathogen card that gives me an additional 2 genetic value, so that adds up to 5. I take the Biofilm card and I put it in my discard pile. I then refill the center row. I've then decided to play my Preemptive Attack card so that all my damage this turn will be automatic. And then finally, I've got one card left in my hand. I don't really want it. I'm going to go ahead and just put it in my discard pile. The next phase of the game is Preemptive Attack. Since I've played a Preemptive Attack, I gain that ability and I go ahead and attack the body now. The damage I'm able to do is 1, plus 2 is 3, plus 2 is 5, plus 1 is 6. I go ahead and take the 6 damage counters. I'm going to take 2 3s. I put those on the Preemptive Attack card. And then finally, the immune system attacks me. I have one pathogen in play, so I draw one immune system card that attacks my pathogen. This card is a neutrophil with an attack of 4. My pathogen in play has a defense of 6. However, it has C3 on it. The card that I've drawn says if one of your pathogens has IgG or C3, move there and increase the attack to 8. Again, my defense is 6, so this pathogen and all the cards attached to it die. However, since I did a preemptive attack, I keep the damage counters that I've already taken. Finally, I clean up my turn. I keep my damage counters. I discard the immune card that was drawn, and I discard all of those cards into my discard pile. I also return the token to the stock. To end my turn, I will draw back up to 5. I had the ability to draw up to 6, but since all my cards got wiped out, I lost that ability, and I draw 5 cards to start my next turn. Starting my next turn, I must again go and discard one card from the center row and replace it with a new card. To start my next turn, I'm again going to play my card Unvaccinated. This lets me draw 3 cards. However, my draw deck currently only has 2 cards in it. I therefore take my Unvaccinated card and place it into a new discard pile for this turn. It does not go into my old discard pile because I cannot access that card again in this turn. So I will take the cards that were discarded previously and I will shuffle them to form a new draw pile. Starting my next turn, I'm going to start off by playing one of my new DNA cards called Adaptation. I'm going to use the special ability on this card, which will trash this card and get it out of my deck. This ability says discard any number of cards from your hand and draw as many cards as you discarded. I've decided that I'm going to discard 4 cards, which includes a fever card, a new DNA card, a normal flora, and a respiratory pathogen. I then trash the adaptation card that I used to do that ability. I then draw 4 cards due to that ability. Well, I'm not having such a good game here, but I've got to do something. So I'm going to put a super pathogen into play. I'm going to play a toxin card onto that pathogen. And then I'm going to play my preemptive attack. Finally, because I've got the genetic value, I'm going to acquire another unvaccinated card to help me cycle through my deck more quickly. That card costs 3, so I'm going to turn in cards with genetic value of 3. And then lastly, I've got a card in my hand called Biofilm, which is a really powerful card. I don't want to spend it this turn, so I have the choice to hang on to it. It counts against my draw, so I still can only draw up to 5, but I'm going to go ahead and hold this card and see if I can match it on my next turn. Next, we move on to Preemptive Attack. I've played my Preemptive Attack card. My pathogen in play has an attack of 2, plus the toxin, which is 6. So now I take the 6 damage counters from the body. I place those on the preemptive attack card. And then finally, the immune system attacks me. And we're down to the final deck. So deck 1 has run out. That's been placed into deck 2. So now we are going to take those and shuffle them together to form the final immune response. So now there's going to be some additional cards in here that I don't know what's coming. So I'll draw the first card. I've got 1 pathogen in play. I draw 1 immune card, and we flip it over. And this card is a card that says this card must move to a pathogen with a toxin card if available. Discard all toxin cards on this pathogen. So it doesn't do any attack, so my pathogen survives, but unfortunately for me, I have to remove and discard the toxin. Finally, I'm going to clean up my turn by keeping the 6 damage counters that I collected. The preemptive attack card goes to my discard pile, and I discard the immune card. To start my next turn, I will draw up to 5. I'm already holding 1 card, so now I will draw 4. So I've now drawn up to 5 to start my next turn. And then I will clean up my discard pile and start my next turn. To start my next turn, I must again discard 1 of the cards in the center row and draw a new card from the top of the deck. All right, starting my next turn, I might have actually got a decent round of cards for once. So I've got some really good trait cards that I'm going to put into play. So lucky for me, in my last turn, my super tissue pathogen survived. This turn, I was able to pull some trait cards out of my hand, so I placed my colic acid, giving me a heavy defense value. I also placed this alpha hemolysin card, giving me an additional card draw. So now I get to go ahead and draw an additional card. Now I've drawn another trait card, which I'm going to go ahead and add to my super pathogen in play. Next, I've got a respiratory pathogen, which I'm going to put into play. Normally, I would not put this card into play right now, since it would certainly die. However, I'm holding a fantastic card called Biofilm. Biofilm allows me to share all traits and toxins of my other pathogens attacking the same body tract are able to share that to this pathogen. So that means the super pathogen that I have in play that has the traits of type 4 Pilus, plus my colic acid, plus the alpha hemolysin are automatically shared to this pathogen when I play this card. Since one of these traits is the alpha hemolysin that has a card draw ability, I've just shared it to my new pathogen. I may immediately draw a new card. I've now decided that I'm going to take my predatory bacteria new DNA card, and I'm going to burn 1 of the cards in the center row. Again, I can do that with the special ability at the top of this card. So I discard that into my discard pile. I'm going to remove 1 card from the center row and hope that the game will finally give me some respiratory cards to work with. Now, an interesting point has come up in this game where I have this type 4 Pilus on 1 of my pathogens, and that gives me the ability to share a +2 attack token to the other pathogen that I've currently put into play. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I've also played the Biofilm card to the other pathogen that just received the bonus token. However, there's a rule in Pathogenesis that no pathogen may ever benefit from the same trait twice. So I don't get to take advantage of this +2 attack token and then take advantage of it again because of Biofilm. It will, however, gain the attack and defense from my colic acid. It'll gain the attack plus the card draw from alpha hemolysin, and it will gain the 1 defense from the type 4 Pilus. It just doesn't get the additional attack. The final card in my hand is Competence, which gives me a 3 genetic value. I've decided that I need more preemptive attack in my deck to win this game, so I'm going to acquire this Exhaustion card that goes into my discard pile. I spend my Competence card to acquire it, and I refill the top spot from the deck. All right, the next phase in the game is preemptive attack, but I don't currently have my preemptive attack card in play. So finally, I will resolve the attacks from the immune system. I've got 2 pathogens in play, and so I will randomly draw 2 immune system cards, and we'll flip those over and find out what happens to my pathogens. I've drawn another Nasty Fever card. It only has attack of 2, so this pathogen definitely survives, as it has plenty of defense to survive the attack. However, I put another fever card into my discard pile. Over here on the other pathogen, I've drawn a pretty nasty card, a cytotoxic T cell, giving this card 6 attack. This card currently has 2 defense, plus it's borrowing some defense over here, which is 3, and borrowing this defense over here, which makes it 6, But however, tie goes to the attacker. So even though I've got a really good defense, this card kills my pathogen. And if the pathogen dies, 1 automatic damage is done to the body. So that actually is a good thing for me. In this case, I get 1 automatic damage as an after effect, but my pathogen and the biofilm card have to go to my discard pile, and I lose the +2 attack token. So now I'm going to clean up my turn by putting my defeated cards in my discard pile, returning the immune system card to the discard pile, the other immune system card to the discard pile, and now I have got a pathogen in play that survived, and it gets to now attack the body for 2, 4, 5, 6 damage. So I'm going to take my damage counters from the body. To start my next turn, I need to draw 5 cards. My draw pile has run out, so I now need to take my discard pile and reshuffle it to make a new draw pile. Since I have a trait card in play that gives me card draw ability, this raises my hand limit, so instead of drawing 5 cards, I will draw 6. To start my next turn, I must go ahead and discard a card from the center row and replace it with the top card from the deck. Starting my next turn, I have again drawn a pesky fever card, so I've got to discard that and it does me no good. I've got another pathogen which I'm going to go ahead and put in play, and exactly on my last turn I'm going to go ahead and put biofilm on it and hope that this round goes better for me. Although this round I have both of my preemptive attack cards, so I'm going to go ahead and play those on my pathogens, and that's going to make all of my attack automatic for this turn. So this should be a good turn for me. And then I finally have 1 card left in my hand, and I'm going to again use its ability to go ahead and discard something from the center row using that top icon. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this card over here because I already have a copy of that. I can't use it twice on the same pathogen, so I'm going to replace it with the next card from the deck. The next phase of the game is preemptive attack. Both of my pathogens in play have preemptive attack, so I go ahead and add up the attack value. This pathogen has an attack of 2, 4, 5, 6. My other pathogen has an attack of 2, and then because it has the attached biofilm card, it gets to borrow all of the attack from the other pathogen from the attached trait card. So it gets to borrow 1 attack, 2 attack, 4 attack, so it also will attack for 6. I take those damage cards and I put them on the preemptive attack cards. The next stage of the game is the immune system attacks me. I must draw 1 card for each pathogen that I have in play, and those again are drawn face down, assigned randomly, and then flipped over and resolved simultaneously. The card on the left says this card must move to a pathogen with a toxin card if available. Discard all toxin cards on this pathogen. I do not currently have a pathogen card in play, so no effect happens. The other immune system card that I've drawn is a basophil with an attack of 3. It does say if one of your pathogens has IgE, move there and draw an additional immune card for that pathogen. I currently don't have any of those tokens attached. The attack is 3, and the defense on this pathogen is currently very good because I've played the biofilm card, allowing me to borrow 3 defense plus another one. So I'm borrowing 4 defense, so this card has a defense of 6, so all my pathogens survive. So now I'm going to clean up my turn by returning the immune system cards to the discard pile. I get to keep all the damage counters that I took on my preemptive attack cards. My preemptive attack cards go to my discard pile. My biofilm card also goes to my discard pile. Finally, the final stage of cleaning up my turn is drawing cards for the next round. Again, I have an additional card draw ability, so instead of drawing up to 5, I will draw up to 6. To start my next turn, I again will discard 1 card from the center and refill. In this hand, I've drawn both of my unvaccinated cards, so I'm going to play my first unvaccinated card, which allows me to draw 3 cards. Again, it's important to note that I cannot use this card again on this current turn. I'm going to play my other copy of unvaccinated. It goes to my new discard pile for this turn, allowing me to draw 3 cards. My draw pile is currently 1, so I draw that, and then my old discard pile will now be reshuffled. Again, it's important to note that those unvaccinated cards I cannot put into this new draw pile because they were cards that were used on this turn. This eliminates the possibility of infinite cycling of your deck. I still need to draw 2 cards, so I've drawn 2 cards, and now I've drawn all my cards for my turn. I again have drawn a fever card, so I'm going to put that into my discard pile. I've drawn one of my heavy toxin cards, so I'm going to go ahead and attach that to one of the pathogens that I have in play. I've also drawn my preemptive attack card, Exhaustion, which I play in my pathogen with the lowest defense, which is the one that I just played that toxin on. I've drawn my smoking preemptive attack, which I'm going to use this round. Oh, and one thing that I haven't been doing, I keep forgetting about this in this demo, I'm able to share attack with this type 4 Pilus. So I'm going to go ahead and share that attack now to this pathogen over here. Next, I've decided that I want to upgrade this respiratory pathogen to a super pathogen. Again, when that happens, I return that card back to the deck. Then I need to buy and pay for the next level up. So it's going to cost me 4. I'm going to go ahead and put that card into play, and it's going to cost me 4. I have a competence card in my hand with 3 genetic value, so I'm going to discard that for 3. I have a normal flora card in my hand, which I'm going to discard to make up those 4 points. I've decided I'd also like to acquire a card from the center row, which is another toxin, which costs another 3 points. So I'm going to spend a respiratory pathogen out of my hand for 2. I'm going to spend a normal flora out of my hand for an additional 1, so I've now spent the 3 points necessary. I can now acquire that toxin card and put it in my discard pile. I then refill the empty spot from the center row deck. As it turns out this game, the preemptive attack is really working for me well, so I've decided that I'm going to acquire another preemptive attack card from the center row deck, which costs 2. So I put that in my discard pile. I'm going to use a respiratory pathogen with a genetic value of 2 to pay for it. That goes into my discard pile. And then I refill the empty spot from the center deck. I still have a new DNA infection card. I'm going to go ahead and cycle the center row deck one more time. So I'm going to use the top icon. That goes into my discard pile, and I get to cycle another card from the center row deck. The final card in my hand is my preemptive attack card, Smoking. I'm going to go ahead and play that on my super pathogen. Okay, the next phase in the game is preemptive attack. I now have a card with a preemptive attack ability. So my Exhaustion gives me the preemptive attack, and this card has an attack of 2, plus the 2 that it's borrowing from the other pathogen, plus the toxin attached of 4. So this can attack for 8, and I take 8 damage counters from the body, and I place those on the preemptive attack card. Oh, I also have a preemptive attack on my other pathogen, and its attack is 2, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to take an additional 6 damage counters and put them on this pathogen, on the preemptive attack card. All right, and the final phase is the immune system is going to attack me. Again, I have 2 pathogens in play, so I'm going to draw 2 immune system cards, and I'm going to assign them at random and assign them face down. Then we flip them over and then simultaneously resolve the immune system attacks. The card that I've drawn on the left is an attack of 6. It also says this card must move to one of your pathogens with IgG or IgM available. Luckily, I don't have any of those tokens in my pathogens, so it stays where it is, and it has attack value of 6. This pathogen has a defense of 1, plus 3 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So this pathogen actually survived an attack of 6. Next, we go to the other immune system card, which is a neutrophil with an attack of 4. But it also says if one of your pathogens has IgG or C3, move there and increase the attack to 8. Again, I don't have any of those tokens attached right now, so the attack remains to be 4. The defense of this card is only 3. It's not currently borrowing any other defense, so this pathogen dies. So I have to return the token that was attached to it. I discard the pathogen into my discard pile. I discard the toxin, but luckily I played a preemptive attack and was able to keep all of my damage. So now we're going to clean up my turn. I return the immune system cards to the discard pile. I discard my preemptive attack cards. I get to keep all the damage counters that I collected on my turn. And then the final stage, the final stage is attacking, but I've already attacked with both of my pathogens using preemptive attack, so my surviving pathogen doesn't get to attack again. Then I will draw 5 cards for my next turn, but again, since I have a trait card in play that gives me an extra card draw ability, it increases my hand limit. I will draw to 6 cards to start my next turn. I currently have 3 cards available to draw, so I will draw those 3 cards. I will reshuffle my discard pile and draw an additional 3 cards. Starting my next turn, I must again discard one of the cards in the center row. Okay, I'm going to start playing cards my next turn. I again have drawn one of those pesky fever cards, which I'm going to go ahead and discard to my discard pile. I'm then going to place a super pathogen into play, and I've again drawn my biofilm card. And again, biofilm lets me share all traits and all toxins of my other pathogens attacking the same body tract. So I've got this other pathogen with 3 nice traits attached, so I can go ahead and play the biofilm card. I'm also going to go ahead and remember to share my +2 attack token on this turn. So because of the trait card on my other pathogen, I get to share an attack token over here. But again, it only gets the attack once. So it's currently being shared by biofilm and being shared by this trait card, but I only get to use that token once because again, no pathogen can benefit from the same trait or toxin card twice in a single turn. I'm then going to go ahead and attach the new toxin that I just drew to the super pathogen that I just played. And then there's a card in the center row that I want to acquire. This is another card that would give me a card draw ability plus defense. It costs 2. So I'm going to go ahead and spend a respiratory pathogen out of my hand. It has a genetic value of 2. So I spend that to my discard pile. I acquire the card for the cost of 2 from the center row and refill that spot from the top of the deck. I then have 1 card left in my hand. I'm again going to use it for the ability on the top of the card. So I spin that to my discard pile. That lets me discard 1 card from the center row and refill it. It's just a really good way to keep the deck moving and find cards that I'm kind of looking for. All right, the next phase of the game is preemptive attack. All my preemptive attack cards are currently in my deck, so I don't have a preemptive attack. So next we're going to move on to the immune system attack, and I have 2 pathogens in play. So I'm going to draw 2 immune system cards. Again, these are drawn randomly, assigned face down in any order that you wish so that you're doing the damage yourself. And then once they're assigned, you flip them over and resolve the effects simultaneously. The first one that I've drawn is a basophil with an attack of 3. If there's any IgE attached, then there's additional effects, but I don't currently have that part of the immune system apparently in this game. So it's an attack of 3. This pathogen has plenty of defense to survive it, so it survives. I next move on to the other immune system card that I drew. And it says this card must move to a pathogen with a toxin card if available, and discard all toxin cards on this pathogen. This pathogen actually does have a toxin attached to it, so sadly for me, I must take that toxin card and discard it. Both of my pathogens have survived this round, so we will discard the immune system cards that were drawn, and now my pathogens get to attack. Starting with the first pathogen, it has an attack of 2, plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, is 6. So I get to take an additional 6 damage counters. And with taking 6 damage counters, I have actually now depleted the respiratory tract of all 60 points of health. And so I have just won the game. The immune system has 3 cards left. So if I had to continue drawing immune cards, if I had to draw 1, 2, 3, the second I cannot draw an immune system card, then the game actually wins. So I was 3 cards away from the game winning. But luckily, with a lot of preemptive attack cards, I was able to do enough damage to the body and win the game. And that's a demonstration of a solo game of Pathogenesis.